Hello and welcome, I'm Oles Gerjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. The Diaspora is one of Ukraine's staunchest supporters on its difficult path to change. Recently, 300 delegates from 30 countries met in the capital city, Kyiv, to discuss how they can contribute to the ongoing reforms in the economic, defense, and humanitarian spheres. The 300 delegates gathered for what is called the Ukrainian World Congress, which has just been held for 11th time. To explain more about the role of this Congress, its latest achievements and present challenges, we welcome to the studio the newly elected president of the UWC, Grod. Hello and thank you for being with us today.
My pleasure.
So first of all, congratulations on your new position.
Thank you.
I know that you were already elected president of this Congress in 2010, and as far as I understand, if I'm not mistaken, you were also vice president twice, right? So Mr. Grod, explain to our audience, what does the UWC do worldwide?
First off, the Ukrainian diaspora is quite large. Our numbers are approximately 20 million Ukrainians live outside of Ukraine.
Wow.
And the Ukrainian World Congress has been working to bring that large diaspora together over the last 50 years. So the Ukrainian World Congress was founded 50 years ago.
Yeah.
With the initial intention, it was actually called the Ukrainian World Congress of Free Ukrainians. And because we considered ourselves during the Soviet times as free Ukrainians. So the objective of the World Congress was to focus on freedom for Ukraine. And that was a primary objective of the World Congress, is to bring together the entire global Ukrainian diaspora to fight for Ukraine's independence.
Even when Ukraine was under the Soviet Union, basically you say that the Congress is 50 years old.
Correct, correct.
Well,
so that's why it was formed. It was formed by people like my parents who felt that we needed to come together globally to fight for Ukraine's freedom.
But what tools does the Congress use to unite Ukrainians worldwide? That's 20 million people. That's quite a figure. That's almost half of the population of the current Ukrainian population, basically.
So indirectly, the Ukrainian World Congress brings together local organizations from Ukrainian schools and Ukrainian dance companies in various cities across the world through to big national organizations. So I am still currently the president of the Ukrainian Congress, which is the umbrella organization for all Ukrainian organizations in Canada. And we bring together local organizations. We have local branches that bring together clubs, student organizations, youth organizations that are Ukrainian, right from schools to dance schools to youth organizations, business organizations. We bring that all together under one umbrella called the Ukrainian Congress. So we unite the community within Canada, and we represent the interests of the Ukrainian community in Canada to the government of Canada. So we have regular dialogues with the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, with the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Public Safety on issues that are important to us as a community. In particular, today, of course, is defending Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Then the Ukrainian Congress and its counterparts, so there's the Ukrainian Congressional Committee of America, there's equivalent organizations around the world in 60 countries around the world. They then come together and we're members of the Ukrainian World Congress. So the Ukrainian World Congress, we're a very powerful diaspora organization. I would consider ourselves one of the most powerful diaspora organizations. And we work with governments around the world and international organizations such as the United Nations. We're an associated member at the United Nations. We work with the European Parliament and other governments to promote interest that our community have. And today, of course, that is Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity.
Well, I'm assuming the activities of the organization have shifted a bit since the Russian invasion in Ukraine back in 2014. How do you think, what is the role of diaspora in Ukraine's life nowadays?
I think the best way to look at the role of the diaspora is really starting from the days prior to the Revolution of Dignity, throughout the Revolution of Dignity, and post. Prior to, we were advocating for and trying to convince the government of Ukraine to, at that point, the president was Viktor Yanukovych, right, to ensure that he took a Euro direction. And we did that by working with our governments. I, for example, was in Ukraine with the Foreign Minister of Canada, who came to a conference just before the Revolution of Dignity to try to convince the Ukrainian government to take a European stance. Obviously, the Ukrainian people, the government took a different stance. The Ukrainian people stood up against them during the Revolution of Dignity. And we, as the Ukrainian World Congress, supported the Maidan, supported the Revolution of Dignity. And we supported it in various ways. Materially, by helping to fund various actions on the Maidan, supporting the people of Ukraine as they stood up against oppression. We worked with our governments to ensure that the government supported Ukraine. And after Yanukovych fled the country, we then worked with our governments to make sure that they supported the new government, because there was a big risk that Russia was trying to convince the world that this government was illegitimate. And that's where, for example, I traveled with the Prime Minister of Canada right after the revolution, right after Prime Minister Yatsenyuk took power, to make sure that we were there to support the new Prime Minister, to say that this is a legitimate government. So we took actions to make sure that the legitimacy of this new government was solidified. Today...
So you always keep an eye on Ukraine.
We are always keeping an eye on Ukraine. And working with our governments throughout the world, in those 60 countries where we do have active member organizations, to try to work with those people and the governments and media to help them understand what the issues are in Ukraine.
Diasporas in what countries are the most effective, the most dedicated, and, well, the most powerful?
Well, in terms of most powerful, I think you could count on Canada, the United States, Australia, Great Britain, Poland, and there are many other countries, but I would say probably those are some of the strongest diaspora organizations.
Probably the biggest ones too.
And the largest ones. We are, one of my objectives as the new president of the World Congress is to work with all those 60 countries and more, because there's even other Ukrainian communities around the world, that we have to unite, and we have to help improve the level of sophistication of those communities, and ensure that they have the institutions that are necessary in order to ensure that we're building a conscientious Ukrainian in those countries. For example, I'm born in Canada. Why am I Ukrainian?
Yes.
Because I grew up through a system of Ukrainian schools, Ukrainian youth organizations, Ukrainian student organizations, Ukrainian professional organizations, and that strategy, that cradle-to-grave strategy of having all those institutions, are really important if we expect to have conscientious Ukrainians for generations to come in those countries around the world.
Speaking of you, I know that you are one of 13 Canadian Ukrainians whose names are included in the sanctions list of Russia. So what did you do to get in that list?
Well, precisely what I explained earlier, and that is working prior to the Maidan to convince the government of Ukraine, at that point controlled by Viktor Yanukovych, to move to Europe. During the Maidan, we supported the Maidan. After the Maidan, we supported the new government. And obviously, Vladimir Putin and his regime don't appreciate me trying to help Ukraine stand on its feet as an independent country.
I understand. So speaking of this latest Congress, what are the outcomes of it?
The outcomes are essentially establishing a strategy for the future. And we were able to bring together over 300 participants from over 30 countries from around the world that participated in forming the strategy for the future. The strategy for the future right now is very immediate and focused, and that is supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity, ensuring that the world supports Ukraine and defends Ukraine against Russia's continuous aggression, whether it's military, economic, political, cultural, and to ensure that we are strong, united, that we have an effective voice in all the countries where we live in terms of ensuring that we're able to gather support for Ukraine. That's priority number one. Priority number two is, as I mentioned, to build strong communities. We cannot influence government, public policy, the media, if we ourselves are assimilating, if we ourselves are becoming, are not maintaining that Ukrainian identity. So creating the institutions to ensure that we have a conscientious Ukrainian communities around the world is also a key priority for the Ukrainian World Congress.
Well, unfortunately, we run out of time, but I thank you so much for your personal contribution into the development of Ukrainian society and to Ukraine's peace and prosperity. And thank you for being a guest today in our studio.
My pleasure. My message is be Ukrainian, because we have a lot to be proud of.
That is very true. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Paul Grod, president of the Ukrainian World Congress. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gajduk. Goodbye.